Hey, what's up, guys? Ash here, Nation 1033. We're going to start doing a unit spotlight. I think it would be interesting for players to see, and this one's a really good one to kick it off. So we're going to be going over rocket launchers, and obviously this has more to do with mid-build players, but also it's important that as you know, the majority of players are long range, knowing how to deal with units like this as well. So there's obviously strengths and weaknesses to it, and that's what we're going to go over. And for comparison, we're going to be using the T10 sniper and the T10 rockets, and it's just important to show the differences. So they're both the same battle power. You will find more health, more defense, more survivability on a mid unit as a whole, right? That's how it should be. Long range is very heavy damage, very low health. So when you bust through someone's front line on a long range player, they don't have very long to live. You have to get through their zombies, and then once the zombies are down, snipers or cannons or EMPs, they're gonna fall flat real fast. But the damage that they'll deal while they're there is pretty incredible, right? That's not the same with a mid build. When a mid player's front line goes down, you're not just going to roll through it. It's still going to be a fight of sorts. And I think that's interesting. It's something you would only experience as a full mid player. And that's not to say that you couldn't use these as a long range attack player, right? You could kind of even out a lot of your stats. In reality, like let's talk about towards end game. If you put a 1,000 LRA player 1,000% LRA player that's full LRA versus, let's say, a 500% LRA with 500% mid range player, the 1,000% long range player is going to win every single time. There's kind of there's a cutoff point where it's no longer worth it, where you should be specializing in mid or long range or melee, whatever it happens to be. Um, but you need to note the stats aren't too far off, right? For T10, 1046 for health, 772 for sniper. Higher defense at 69 versus 43. Sniper has 208 attack. Rockets have 181. That's all pretty close, but you'll notice the difference in toughness when you fight a mid player and fighting their mid range, right? When their front row finally does go down. Um, Interesting that they have a attack cooldown of 2 because many mid units fire a lot faster, gunners or bikes, and that changes the game drastically, but we're going to stick with just rockets for today. Attack range 2.5, this actually isn't as much as it looks like. What is a lot is their special ability, and they don't give you an exact attack range that the rocket goes, but this is going to be very important when we do actually go over it. Um, so, in comparison to the T10 sniper, snipers have sniper hit. Every 3 attacks will trigger a deadly hit, dealing 1.8 times damage to a single enemy, and snipers will target closest to them, right? And that's sometimes good, most of the times bad. um, because there's no, they're not hitting what's important. They're only hitting what's in front of them, and that's not always a good thing. And with rockets and overshoot, every 3 attacks will cast overshoot, dealing tons of damage to a single enemy. Let's stop right there. So, uh, I don't know why they didn't include this, but overshoot is in fact 1.8 times damage. It's the exact same as a sniper. And so you should think of rockets as a mid-range sniper in a way. But this is where it gets interesting. Uh, it prioritizes attacking the enemy's back row within range. There's a lot to break down in there. So first, it doesn't say which piece of the back row, right? If you're fighting somebody and you need to kill just their snipers, it might hit their shielders, it might hit their EMP, right? So you don't get the choice of the back row. It's just going to prioritize the back row. Um, But the second piece of this is within range. And we're going to go over this in the practical after that, where this is very, very important. Now, also, similar to snipers, second hit when a fight first starts is going to be the special, and that's the exact same for rockets. Overshoot's going to trigger on the second hit, and then every 3 attacks after that. All right, so let's get into the practical and what this actually means. Okay, so here's a battle during DoD. One of my teammates, Citrix, versus 1101's SHG TW909. Citrix is a normal standard long range player, and TW909 is a standard mid range player. And we can go through this really quick. His stats are good for where our nation is at. 700 mid range attack is quite a bit. And he's got generally pretty good stats. This is maybe top 10% of players for our nation and our globe, right? Citrix is not anywhere near that. He's at 367, which is almost about half of what the mid-range player is, right? And by pure math, Citrix gets destroyed, and he should get destroyed because there's such a vast stat difference, right? But what I want to show is what the rockets do, right? So here is Citrix's army. Looking at it at first glance, it actually looks pretty good. He's got about 1% of each type of unit for the small units, right? Then he's looks like he's heavy shredders, probably T10. And then in the back row, he's got 1,000 EMP, 1,000 cannons, 800 shielders, and 200,000 snipers. It's actually really not bad for where he's at. I'm sure he's C30 to C33 based on the composition. I would add more EMPs. Nevertheless, so you can see his fighting force, his power, his real attack power, right, is from his snipers. And so SHG, I'm just going to call him SHG because it's easier. Mid-range player, you can see that he has 160,000 rockets, right? And so his fighting power is behind his rocket launchers. He's also got 23,000 gunners. That's kind of cool. A front line with some shredders. They're both C30, C30 to C33, or at least that's pretty clear to me. And the difference mainly is the stats, and the stats are unbelievably dumb, right? But I want you guys to pay close attention to the rocket launchers here. So first hit, regular, and it kills the tanks right off the bat. You can see it, boom, and it crits too. That's pretty nasty. So now, even though overshoot and snipe are both every 3 attacks, for snipers and rockets, their second attack will trigger their special, right? And so right here, you're going to see it come out from them. Boom. That's the rockets going out. And notice, unlike the snipers, right, Citrix's snipers are hitting the shredders, but because they have to hit what's closest to them, nearest line of sight. Whereas with rockets, this is where it's neat because, the snipe overshoot ability that does 1.8 times damage, same as the snipers, skips to the back row. And so what does 160,000 mid-range snipers do to 200,000 snipers with a 700 mid-range attack score? So there's 200,000 snipers, boom. And it hits them for 87, almost 90,000 troops. That's almost half of Citrix's attacking force, right? That's massive. This is the pro to being mid-range. This is the pro to being a mid-range player, is that rockets are skipping the front row, because the front row, you'll notice, are still fighting, right? The shredders are going against the shredders. Everybody's fighting up front, but the rockets are skipping that, and so they're hitting weaker units in the back row that have no health and have no defense. And this is obviously very lopsided. Had their stats been equal, the mid-range player probably still would have won. And that's just because of how rockets are designed, right? It's not equal, and he just gets murdered, right? But we'll keep watching. 2, and then 3. And so now the rockets are up again. There's 89,000 snipers. Here goes the blast again. You see the rockets going out, right? And then boom, 89,000. It's so bad. It's so bad because it's so many at once. And so if you guys are thinking about going mid, this is one of the large reasons to switch to mid, is that you're going to skip hitting the front and go straight to the back row. And once a long range player's back row is gone, even if they have good melee, it's just going to live for a while and then die on its own. You're not going to be able to kill anything, right? And so, needless to say, Citrix gets destroyed. And yeah, so that's rockets at kind of almost a perfect scenario. It targeted the unit it needed to target. Now keep in mind, it could have targeted on this one. It could have possibly targeted the EMP lasers. It looks like it also died at the same time with the destructive lightning from the male Titan. And on here, on the very first shot, it could have definitely targeted the EMP or the shield breakers, right? But it did end up targeting the snipers, and that's good. Right. So now we are going to take this exact same player, and this is a fight I had to do with him for DoD, and my stats are very good. They're definitely better than this guy's. Not like overwhelmingly, but he's not going to stand a chance. And he also lost. He also took a couple other hits, I think, before then. So right here, so I've got 850 LRA at this point, 670 melee hip, right? And then he's got 530 and 700. So we go into this fight, and here's one of the weaknesses for rockets that, I think the first weakness is that it's random in the back row. So you guys should be setting 4 units always. You should always have shielders, EMP, snipers, and cannons, because there's a chance that 200,000 rockets will hit one shielder, right? And that's a total waste of their special ability, and that's a good thing if you're fighting them. Here's the second weakness of rockets that many players don't know. So first hit goes out, second hit right there, rockets go out, boom, and it hits my tanks. Why? Turns out there is an attack range on rocket launchers, and cannons have the longest attack range in the game at 4. Snipers and shielders have 3.8, and EMPs have 3.5. But as it turns out, these rockets need to be closer to the cannons to get there. This is particularly devastating and very easily seen when you see a C-34 versus a C-34 mid, like a C-34 long range versus a C-34 mid. C-34, you get tanks and you get cannons, both of which are just unbelievably awesome. But cannons have so much range that rockets can't actually get to them unless they're positioned in a very bad way. So instead of doing 1.8 times damage to my back row, he does 1.8 times damage to my front row, which that just kind of bounces off, and that just doesn't matter, right? And so it's no surprise here, I use like a poison gas, and I do have higher stats, and he ends up dying, right? But what I'm trying to show you guys is that the two glaring weaknesses that they do have, and that's really bad, because then it doesn't really change much, right? Then it's just a mid-range sniper, essentially. And so, with Citrix, where it was snipers, I would say in general, it depends the positioning, right? But you can the rockets at where they're at can easily hit Citrix's snipers, EMP, and shielders. I'm not sure. I would guess not, based on range, that they could hit cannons at this current moment in this current formation, right? But in this one, having that their special just hit the front row, it's so pointless. It doesn't make them special in any form or way. Anyway, food for thought. I think this is really interesting. This is how I beat a lot of mid-range players that go too heavy on rockets. And so mid-range players should actually be dividing their units more evenly. Rockets are great. They're not the only unit in the mid row, but that is for another time. Anyway, you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe like always, and until next time.